With highly qualified testimony, radar data and officially declassified videos, it seems more and more likely that we are visited by another form of intelligence. If UFOs are indeed real crafts and not a series of illusions and misconceptions, it opens an infinite amount of debates as to who and what their intentions are here on Earth. Even current chief of NASA and ex-President Barack Obama validated the validity of the phenomenon recently.
What you've seen is what those Navy pilots saw in 2004, and there have been some 300 sightings since then. And I've talked to those pilots, and they know they saw something, and their radar's locked onto it.
There's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory.
As more and more people grow impatient around the world, it is only normal for us to try to think of all the possibilities. In this short documentary, I will take a very speculative approach and give you my personal theory on the matter about our place as a species. A first parallel we could easily make between us and our visitors seems to be the way we monitor animals. By curiosity and responsibility, we seem to share a common interest for studying life, as demonstrated by this next montage of the capture of a rhinoceros in Africa and the famous Pascagoula abduction case.
I guess that was when I heard it. It was some kind of zipping sound, and when I turned around in this area out here, about 40 or 50 feet out there, there was some kind of craft, you know. It looked like it was going to come right onto the ground. But it came on down and hovered about a foot and a half or 2 feet off of the ground. We didn't know what to do, you know. The river behind us and that out there not knowing what it was. And when they carried me inside, they seemed to just lean me back, you know. And this eye, well, I keep referring to it as an eye, and it moved up in front of me about this close. And it started right at my eyes, looking me right in the eye. And it hesitated there for a few seconds, and it just started moving over my entire body. When they brought me from the craft along this area here, and they didn't drop me, you know, they just released me back to the ground. And I fell. I don't know why my legs were weak. I don't know why it was the fright or what it was, but I fell onto the ground.
Statistically speaking, a vast majority of abductees recall being taken aboard a craft for sperm extraction or insemination. Their experience is eerily similar to what we practice here on Earth. Artificial insemination is the deliberate introduction of sperm into a female's cervix or uterine cavity for the purpose of achieving pregnancy. It is a powerful tool often employed for livestock improvement.
We can be genetically superior in selection on our bulls, and we can have a really, really good herd.
They put like a jock strap on you of some sort with a tube attached to it, and it runs to a machine, and they somehow extract sperm. I don't know how they do it.
And I found myself in this room, and I was lying on this stretcher, and this being, I don't even know how to say this, he started to put my legs apart.
It seems we share a fascination with youthfulness. Perhaps the two best cases of alleged interactions with aliens, in terms of number of witnesses, happened in schools: the Westall School in Australia and the Ariel School in Zimbabwe. In the case of the Ariel School, 60 kids said they saw ships land on their playground, and 30 got closer to see aliens standing in front of them. They allegedly were in a trance. All witnesses stand with their testimony to this day. One even mentions that, quote, "It's as if they wanted us to come with them." The most trustworthy reports of UFOs in the military often mention incidents where weapons are either disabled or simply destroyed. Physicist Robert Jacobs was an officer in charge of optical instrumentation of missile tests launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base in 1964.
We watched that stage burn out, we watched the second stage burn out, we watched the third stage burn out, and into the frame came something else. It flew into the frame like this, and it shot a beam of light at the warhead, which is represented by my thumb here. Now, remember, all this stuff is flying at several thousand miles an hour. So this thing fires a beam of light at the warhead, hits it, and then this thing flies up like this. Meanwhile, we're all going like this, fires another beam of light, goes around like this, we're going like this, fires another beam of light, goes down like this, fires another beam of light, and then flies out the way it came in. And the warhead tumbles out of space.
Perhaps even more concerning, declassified US government documents show evidence of ongoing incursions by unidentified aerial objects at nuclear missile sites over several decades. Robert Salas recalls his experience as part of a missile combat crew in control of intercontinental ballistic missiles.
I was there as on a combat crew. We had control of 10 nuclear missiles, and sometime in the evening I was in command, and I received a phone call from my guards, and he said that they were seeing strange lights in the sky, flying very fast and stopping and reversing course and making maneuvers that they didn't think aircraft could make. So I was not, didn't consider his comments seriously, I guess. And then he called back 5 minutes later, and this time he was very frightened, very scared, shouting into the phone, saying that he had his guards there, and they were seeing a oval-shaped orange-red object hovering just above the gate of our facility. He hung up the phone, and I went to tell my commander about this phone call, and as I was speaking to him, the missiles went into inoperable condition, what we called no-go. They could not be launched, and we lost all 10 of them.
David Fravor is a Navy pilot of 18 years and a primary witness in one of the most credible UFO sightings in history. He recalls a story a fellow helicopter pilot told him after he came out publicly with his sighting.
So he goes out, he says, not too long later, a few months later, he's out and he's picking up a torpedo. So he says they hook the diver up on the winch and they're lowering him in, and as he's looking down, he sees this big, massive, he goes, it's not a submarine. He's seen submarines before. Once you see a submarine, you can't confuse it with something else. This big object, kind of circular, he says, is coming up from the depths, and he starts screaming through the intercom system to tell him to pull the diver up, and the diver's like a few feet from the water. So they reverse the winch, and the diver's thinking, what the hell's going on? And he's getting pulled up, and all of a sudden, he said the torpedo just got sucked down underwater, and the object just descended back down into the depths, and they never recovered this.
A large number of the UFOs spotted over the years seem to operate with very little similarity to known propulsion technologies. They often look akin to drones, controlled by AI, moving heretically. It is rumored that by chance, or even by baiting them, some of these have been recovered by the Air Force. Ross Coulthart is a journalist known for the program 60 Minutes in Australia. He recently produced a documentary and a book about the UFO phenomenon. His research led him to some pretty significant discoveries.
And so one of the people that I wrote to was a guy, drumroll, called Nat Kobitz, who was the director of science and technology development for the US Navy. He was literally the boffin, the chief geek for the US Navy for well on 30 years. And then completely out of the blue one day, he said to me, "Ras, why don't you just ask me the question?" And so my heart's beating at 100 miles an hour at that point. And I said, "Were you ever read into a UFO retrieval and re-engineering program?" And I'm waiting, and there's no reply at the end of the line, and there's this kind of hiss, trans-Pacific hiss. And then back comes, "Yes," very firm. And I almost fall off my chair, and I go, "Oh, sorry, I thought he was going to deny to me, and say flatly no." And he'd obviously made the decision. And so I figured, at one stage, he actually said to me, he says, "Oh, what are they going to do to me? What are they going to do to me?" I then asked the next question. I said, "So can I just clarify? You said you were read into a UFO retrieval program." I said, "How many were you told had been retrieved?" "Multiple."
Reports of recovered UFOs date back to as far as 1947, where a flying saucer containing living humanoids was allegedly captured by the US Air Force.
3 feet per second, contact now. That was a beautiful one.
Apollo astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who had grown up around Roswell, was an aerospace insider with deep Pentagon connections. He became convinced there were UFO secrets concealed from normal government channels.
Well, if the accounts are to be believed, yes, there have been ET visitation, there have been crashed craft, there have been material and bodies recovered, and there is some group of people somewhere that may or may not be associated with government at this point, but certainly were at one time, that have this knowledge.
Even on the civilian side, studies of alien materials are finally happening.
Dr. Jacques Vallee has collected purported metal debris from UFO cases dating as far back as 1947 that experts are analyzing in a state-of-the-art laboratory.
The breakthrough has come with the invention of a machine that enables us to look at the atomic structure. And at that point, the atomic structure is impossible to fake.
This device is a multi-parameter ion beam imager.
Dr. Gary Nolan, a Stanford microbiologist, is using a revolutionary three-dimensional imaging device to analyze the samples right down to their individual atoms. When Dr. Nolan placed some of the fragments in the vacuum chamber of his instrument, he was astonished to find their composition was unlike any known metal.
Just one spot, and the isotopic composition all the way across.
No matter where he looked in the sample's jumble of elements, whether magnesium, iron, nickel, or titanium, the ratio of isotopes didn't make any sense.
If you're talking about an advanced material from an advanced civilization, you're talking about something that I'll just call it an ultra material, right? It's something which has properties where somebody is putting it together, again, at the atomic scale. We're building our world with 80 elements. Somebody else is building the world with 253 different isotopes.
Efforts through meditation and various protocols have been made around the world to make contact with aliens. Sadly, the results are very underwhelming. It really seems like credible accounts of contact are on the terms of our visitors. As an analogy, picture dolphins following a boat in the middle of the ocean. To them, the experience must feel surreal. Later in life, some of them might even navigate the surface and jump to see if there are any more boats to be perceived, resulting in obvious disappointment. That being said, it is speculated that certain alien crafts, possibly AI-controlled, can be tracked with specific frequencies.
I've spoken to boffins who've told me that the US knew the frequencies that allowed them to track, detect, and anticipate these objects. They've known about this and they've been tracking them with aircraft. And I've spoken to people, Bob Fish is one guy I name in my book, who's a former very, very highly cleared, top secret SCI cleared communications expert who was working in the offices of a major defense contractor, and he was briefed about an incident where the frequencies for the object and its movement are described and tracked by this US Air Force craft.
We have not been hiding anything. The investigations have been made public.
Elizondo is the former director of the now-defunct Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, a special access program initiated by the Defense Intelligence Agency in order to study unidentified aerial phenomena.
Is it possible that intelligent life has found us first? And I think I've often used the analogy of standing on a sandy beach looking at the horizon. And in doing so, one wonders what's it like over the horizon. And although as a individual, these paradigm moments don't happen all the time, as a species they do. And someone had the courage to say, I'm going to sail over that horizon, despite everybody saying, no, you're going to fall off the earth and it's flat and there's sea monsters out there. And lo and behold, someone took a chance and here we are. As a species, we did it. And it turns out there are sea monsters. There are things called great white sharks and blue whales and great squid of the Pacific. But they're not really monsters. They're just part of nature. They're just part of our reality, our current paradigm. And they're normal. And so perhaps this topic is yet just another horizon that we're looking at. And we're on the precipice of sailing over the horizon for the first time. I think it's in our genetics to continue to search and strive to look for answers. I don't think this topic is any different. And it may turn out that what we find over the horizon may be a reflection of us. Maybe we're not so unique after all. Maybe we're part of a much more beautiful cosmic neighborhood where life is abundant. And then we have to redefine what it means to be human. Because maybe being human isn't quite so unique after all.
To tell you the truth, what got me into the subject of UFOs and ultimately aliens was the psychological aspect. I remember stumbling upon bits and pieces of what seemed like credible evidence and wanting to share my findings to my friends and family. What I ultimately discovered was an incredible amount of apathy. Sure, the field is riddled with hoaxers, crackpots and grifters, but so is almost everything else. My personal belief is that in order to go on with our daily lives, we need stability and order. Believing there are more advanced life forms zipping over our heads contradicts our sense of security. Perhaps it's my sense of recklessness that drove me here. I will simply end with this. Tomorrow is Monday.
But I think this is one of the great questions in physics and philosophy, is where are the aliens? Maybe they're among us, I don't know.
If you enjoy this type of content, please consider subscribing.